In the heart of a land wrapped in stories, somewhere between the whispering forests of Nsukka and the red clay roads of Ekiti, there was a village known as Ajadawala, the place where spirits walk. The elders swore the wind there spoke in riddles, and the moon sometimes dipped twice before dawn. It was in this strange, spirit-kissed village that a girl named Nessa was born, and she was born under unusual circumstances. No one knew who her mother was. No one could say where her father came from. One Harmattan morning, just before the cock crowed, the women fetching water by the riverbank found a woven raffia basket drifting at the edge, caught between a stubborn rock and the roots of an old irako tree. Inside the basket, there was no cloth, no charm, no note, only a baby with eyes too wide, too still, and too knowing for a newborn. She didn't cry. She just stared at the sky like she had seen this world before and wasn't impressed. The women screamed. Some spat on the ground for protection. One woman picked her up and saw something so chilling, she nearly dropped her. The child had no shadow. Even in the full glow of the rising sun, she cast none. The elders were summoned. The priest of the village shrine rubbed red chalk on her forehead and declared, "She is of this world and not of this world." The villagers named her Nessa, meaning, the one who remains. For a time, she was passed from one reluctant hand to another. But no one wanted to keep a girl who walked in sunlight without leaving a trace. It was Mama Eid, the mute, hunchbacked herbalist who finally took her in. Mama Eid, who lived alone at the edge of the village where the shrubs listened and the stones remembered. She spoke not with her mouth, but with her eyes and her hands, and Nessa learned both fluently. In silence, they built a life. They sold herbs, mixed soaps, and crafted potions. Nessa grew among boiling pots and bitter roots, always watching, always learning. At age 8, she could tell the difference between ojirasai leaves and egbisi by smell alone. By 12, she was healing village children with pawpaw seeds and lime bark. But by the time she turned 15, something strange happened. Mama Eid vanished. No farewell. No signs of struggle. Her wooden spoon was still in the pot. Her walking stick leaned against the door. Some say the spirits came for her. Others said she had finally returned to her true form, a whisper. Once again, Nessa was alone. But this time, she did not wait for someone to claim her. She packed Mama Eid's recipes, stepped into the market square, and took up a stall of her own. That was the beginning. The village watched, baffled, as the shadowless girl bloomed into a powerful woman. She was no longer a curiosity. They began to fear her. She traded herbs for goods, then goods for land. She bought a plot near the old shrine and built a wide compound of polished earth and carved doors. Her business grew from soaps to fabrics, from fabrics to palm oil trade. She had a caravan of boys who worked under her. She never raised her voice, never smiled, never greeted anyone without purpose. She was cold, calculated, and immensely wealthy by village standards. But wealth, they say, cannot buy companionship. Suitors came, yes. Many. Some from faraway lands, sons of chiefs, foreign merchants, returning London boys who wore suits in the sun. All were captivated by her beauty. Nessa had grown tall and striking, with skin the color of midnight mango bark and eyes like roasted cola, bitter, dark, and intoxicating. But all who came left with the same tale. She had one rule, one condition, one madness. "If you want me," she would say, "you must wear a leash like a dog. I will hold it, and you will follow me wherever I go. You need not work. You will eat what I eat, sleep on silk, drink from glass. But you will wear the leash, and you must never remove it." They thought she was joking. She was not. Some tried it. They knelt, thinking it was a ritual. She brought out the leash, real leather, hand-stitched, dyed red. Some cursed and fled. One man agreed to try for a week. By the second day, he vanished before sunrise, never to return. And Nessa? She did not flinch. She did not beg. She returned to her business. Alone, unbothered, unshaken. Let her remain unmarried, the villagers whispered. Her madness is her shadow. But they were wrong. Nessa was not mad. Nessa was scared. Deep within her, beneath the silence, beneath the power, beneath the masks of pride, lay a little girl still floating in that basket, afraid that anyone she loved might one day vanish like Mama Eid, like her unknown mother, like her unborn shadow. And so she clutched power the way a drowning woman clutches driftwood. She let no one in. She trusted no man. She loved no one, but she offered leash and luxury as her twisted version of love. Until one day the wind changed. In Ajadala, everyone knew stories were not only told, they were lived. And the story of Nessa's dog Leash Rule soon grew long legs and wandered into distant towns like a fable blown by Harmattan wind. Traders who passed through the village carried the tale like pepper in their baskets. Market women in Ogbomosho, farmers in Succa, and even barbers in Wari now whispered of a strange and beautiful woman who leashed her husband like a dog. But in Ajadala, it wasn't just a story. It was law. Nessa herself carved the rule into the lintel of her gate, written in 3 languages, English, Igbo, and Yoruba. No man enters this house unless he agrees to the leash. Her compound sat at the end of the village like a fortress of wealth. Polished red earth surrounded the mansion, with 4 gates guarded by thick men in black wrappers and eyes like vultures. Her house shimmered like poured bronze. Palm trees bent low in submission. 2 Alsatian dogs roamed the yard, not leashed, but watching. Always watching. Every morning, Nessa walked to the market in gold sandals and a veil of white lace. She carried a polished staff, not for walking, but for presence. Behind her trailed 2 girls with baskets and 3 boys with ledgers. She bought, she sold, she commanded. But beside her arm hung a red leather leash. Always empty. The villagers began to joke. The leash will rot before it finds a neck. Her womb will dry like pepper while waiting for a dogman. Even mad men fear her now. But Nessa didn't flinch. Her eyes remained unreadable, her lips silent. Deep inside, she had reasoned with herself. If love will only come and leave, let me have loyalty. If heart cannot stay, let obedience stay. A dog follows, even when it is beaten. A man? A man will smile today and vanish tomorrow. And so she waited, not for love, but for control. One evening, as the sun bled orange into the sky, a young man arrived in the village. He was tall, fine-featured, and carried a NYSC bag slung lazily over one shoulder. His boots were covered in red dust. His uniform shirt was untucked, buttons missing. A folder peeked from his pocket, labeled Posting. Ajadala LJ. His name was Paul. Paul was what the village elders called a fine waste of God's clay. Handsome beyond reason, smooth-tongued, and painfully lazy. The kind of man who could sleep through thunder, wake up hungry, and expect someone to feed him for smiling. He had studied political science in a university where he barely graduated, mostly due to charm, not effort. He came to Ajadala not to serve Nigeria, but to escape pressure. All he wanted was 3 things: free food, free time, and a shortcut to wealth. On his second day in the village, he heard about Nessa. It was at the court members' lodge, while peeling roasted yam with 3 others under a mango tree. One was talking about local girls, another about how far the nearest bar was. Then one of them, a slim, sharp-tongued girl from Edo, whispered, "Forget all these village girls. Have you heard of Madam Leash?" "Who be that?" Paul asked, chewing slowly, and they told him the story. He laughed until tears fell. "Wait, she dey put leash on husband for real?" "Real, my brother. She go carry the man go market like goat. And the man no go worko. He go just follow her day waka." Paul stopped laughing. No work? Free food? A palace-like house? A woman so rich even banks begged her to deposit? He sat up, wiped his mouth, and muttered, "God, Nami be the dog." The next morning, Paul ironed his NYSC uniform for the first time in 2 weeks. He brushed his shoes till they shined like oil. He used all his roommates' cologne. Then he walked to Nessa's compound and told the guard at the gate, "Tell Madam that her husband has come." The guards laughed like thunder rolling over hills. But they let him in. Nessa met him in the courtyard, dressed in her usual white lace and gold jewelry. Her eyes scanned him from head to toe. She said nothing. Paul, full of charm, knelt like he was in a Nollywood audition. "My queen," he said, "put the leash. I will follow you to the ends of the earth." For the first time in many years, Nessa blinked. Not in shock, but in recognition. "He's not the first to kneel," she said. "But I'll be the last to run," Paul replied. She studied him for a long, aching minute. Then she turned to one of her guards and said, "Bring the leash." Within 2 weeks, the entire village knew Nessa had married. And her husband, true to his word, wore the red leather leash around his neck, following her like a silent dog. They called him Mr. Leash. Children sang songs about him. Old women shook their heads. NYSC officials wrote letters to the LG office. But no one could touch Nessa. Her guards were loyal. Her money was long. Her power reached beyond Ajitola. And Paul? He ate well, slept deeply, wore gold sandals and silk wrappers. He drank kunu from chilled flasks and bathed in goat milk. Nessa treated him like royalty, except he was never free. If she went to market, he followed. If she went to the stream, he trailed. If she met with village chiefs, he sat beside her, leashed like a well-behaved dog. And the strange thing? She never embarrassed him. She fed him with her hands in private, listened to his lazy jokes, even smiled sometimes. But she never, ever let go of the leash. Not once. Behind the laughter of villagers, behind the whispers and warnings, a new story had begun to take shape. One neither Nessa nor Paul expected, because slowly, silently, something was changing. And love, the kind that neither leash nor logic could bind, was beginning to stir like fire beneath wet wood. The compound of Nessa, the shadowless woman, became a site of daily pilgrimage. Children peeped through bamboo fences just to see Paul in his NYSC uniform, leash clipped to a red collar that circled his neck like a choker. Housewives gossiped with chewing sticks wedged in their mouths. Palm wine drinkers at the square started placing bets. Will he last till end of service? He go tire. Watch. Na woman dem day follow, not chain. But Paul, the lazy fine boy from Akka, remained. Not just because of the wealth, though that was part of it. Not just because of the food, though my brother, the food was heavy. Nessa served him okra soup with snail as big as yam tubers, soft pounded yam with goat meat, chilled tiger nut milk, fresh catfish stew every Thursday. She even had a private chef from Calabar who knew how to cook Edidin soup without bitterness. No, Paul remained because of confusion. Nessa was not what he expected. Yes, she led him by a leash in public. Yes, she ignored him when elders spoke and kept him behind her like a handbag. But when they entered the privacy of her room, her wide, sweet-scented chamber with velvet curtains and marbled floor, she became soft. She would untie the leash, make him sit, and rub his forehead with cool cloth. She would wash his feet herself and tell him stories, not fairy tales, but broken memories. "I don't remember my mother," she once whispered, resting her head on his chest. "I don't remember my father." Only the sound of water rocking a basket. Paul, usually quick with words, had none. He had never met a woman like this. A tyrant by day, a goddess by night. Power in the morning, pain in the evening. It messed with him. Completely. And for the first time in his useless, lazy life, Paul began to think. "Guy, are you crazy?" One of his fellow court members hissed one afternoon when they met secretly behind the bush path. "She has turned you into a puppy. You follow her, like they tied a remote control to your soul." Paul smiled weakly. "But I'm eating well now." The court member grabbed his shoulder. "Eating well? That's not life. You for better run. Run while your legs are still glued to your body." Paul sighed. The truth was, he had planned to run. That had been the mission. From the first moment he stepped into her compound and saw her mansion, he told himself, use this woman. Chop her money. Once NYSC and disappear. He even drafted a plan. After the final clearance, He'd vanished with her gold ring, maybe some dollars she kept in a chest in the back room. Flee to Lagos. Start fresh. Lazy boy, big dreams.
But now?
Now his heart was misbehaving. It started on the 43rd day of their marriage. Paul began waking up before Nessa. He would stare at her while she slept, the tight crease between her brows softening in rest. Her breathing was gentle, like a song whispered to the ear of the night. Then came something even stranger. Paul began to feel useless. All he did was follow, eat, sleep, and obey. No input, no responsibility, no purpose. Like a well-fed goat waiting for Christmas. One afternoon, he was watching two of Nessa's boys load her delivery truck with bales of dyed fabric when the feeling hit him hard. This is what I've become, he thought. A man on a leash watching boys half his age work? He left the veranda and walked into the storage room. For the first time in his life, Paul carried a box. A real box. Heavy one. Sweat gathered around his armpits. His back complained. His legs shook. But he carried it. Nessa walked in and stared. She said nothing, just watched. That night, she didn't untie the leash. She didn't rub his head. She didn't even feed him. She sat in silence, then finally whispered, "Why did you lift that box?" Paul swallowed hard. "I wanted to feel like a man," he said. She nodded slowly, then said nothing more. From that day, Paul began doing small things. Cleaning the sitting room, arranging the herbal bottles, reading Mama Eat's old recipe book. He was still lazy, let's not lie. But something inside him had begun to awaken. He started seeing Nessa differently, not just as a means to an end, but as a broken woman trying to protect herself with power. Her harshness made sense. Her rule wasn't madness, it was fear in disguise. And then one rainy night, the turning point came. Lightning danced across the sky, cutting the dark clouds into fragments. Thunder growled low, like an angry lion preparing to strike. The compound lights flickered. The rain beat hard against the roof. Paul and Nessa sat in the center of the room. No guards.
No servants.
Just them. The storm was loud, but the silence between them was louder. Then Nessa, wrapped in a loose wrapper, looked at him with wet eyes and asked, "Why haven't you run?" Paul looked down. His voice trembled. "Because I think I love you." She scoffed. "Don't lie." "I'm not lying." "You plan to use me." "I know." "Yes," Paul admitted, heart pounding. "But somewhere along the line you used me too." She blinked. Rain drummed harder on the rooftop. Her hand trembled. Paul reached out and took it. "You chained my body, but somehow, you freed my soul." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. And that night, for the first time, Nessa broke down. Tears rolled down her cheeks like forgotten rivers. She clung to him, leash and all, and wept the weeping of many years, of loneliness, of rejection, of a love she thought would never come. And Paul held her like a man who had finally found something worth changing for. The winds outside howled, but inside the mansion, two broken souls began to bind, not with chains, but with truth. And though the leash still hung between them, something invisible and more powerful had begun to form. Something like trust. The villagers didn't know when it happened. They only knew that something had changed. At first it was little things. Paul no longer walked behind Nessa, with his head bowed, like a pet. He now walked beside her, not in defiance, but in quiet confidence. The leash was still there, clipped to the red leather collar. But there was a shift, subtle but strong, like a shadow learning to stand on its own. Then came the day the leash dropped.
It was market day.
Ajidala was loud with shouts and bargaining. Fresh tomatoes stained the earth. Goats bleated. Palm wine gurgled in kegs. Nessa walked through her usual path, flanked by her guards and aides. Paul, as always, followed beside her in clean NYSC uniform. Then a boy, barely 10 years old, shouted something that cut through the air. "Madam, why your dog no bark today?" Laughter. Real, rich, belly-deep laughter rolled through the market. Paul stopped. Nessa stopped. The guards tensed. Nessa turned her head slowly to the boy, her face unreadable. Then she turned to Paul. He looked at her calmly, his collar bright under the sun. Nessa reached out, and for the first time in public, she unclipped the leash. The market went silent. You could hear a leaf fall from a pawpaw tree. She held the leash in one hand, her fingers tightening around it as though it burned. Paul didn't run. He didn't even move. Instead, he reached out and held her other hand, the one that was free. Just held it. And in that small, simple act, Nessa's world, built on years of fear, rules, and red leather, trembled. That evening, news flew like bats at dusk. Nessa dropped the leash. He didn't run. They held hands, like human beings. The elders gathered. Some called it a sign of weakness, others a sign of healing. But Nessa? Nessa went home and stood in front of her mirror for a long time. She looked at herself, at the hand that held the leash, and then at the one that had been held by Paul. She placed the leash on the shelf and whispered to her reflection, "Let this be the beginning of my courage." But old habits die like snakes, thrashing to the end. In the following days, Nessa struggled. She was used to control,
To fear keeping people in place.
to power making her feel safe. But now Paul was speaking freely, not rudely, but as a man who had found voice. He started making suggestions about the fabric business. He helped in reorganizing the delivery logs. He even spoke to her guards like equals. One morning he told her, "I want to get a job after NYSC." The words struck her like thunder in Harmattan. "You what?" "I want to teach. Government school. Even if it's small.
I want to do something.
Her lips parted, but she said nothing. That night she didn't eat. Paul came to her, sat beside her in silence, and held her again. "I'm not trying to leave you," he said. "I'm just trying to find myself. Don't be afraid of me standing. I'm not walking away." She closed her eyes, and for the first time, she allowed herself to believe it might be true. That same week, Paul went to the local government office and applied to teach civic education. He was offered a part-time role. It paid almost nothing, but his chest rose when he wore his own ID badge. The villagers were confused. Nahu day see money but go day suffer? But Paul knew. He had tasted the sweetness of love given, not begged. And Nessa, though still guarded, began to open. She smiled more. She asked questions. She started going to evening prayer meetings with the church women, still wrapped in white, but now sitting beside them like a sister, not a queen. One night, after Paul returned from school dusty and tired, he found her waiting at the door. No guards.
Nice.
Just Nessa. She pulled him inside, sat him down, washed his feet in silence, and said, "You're not a dog." Paul looked at her, eyes soft. "I know," he whispered. "And I'm not a prison," she added. He nodded. "I never thought you were." She reached under the bed and brought out the leash. Not to clip it, but to place it in his hands.
"You can burn it," she said.
"Or keep it. But today, I give it to you. My fear is not your burden anymore." Paul's eyes filled with tears. He leaned forward, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "Then let us bury it together." That night, they walked to the edge of the compound, dug a small hole under the almond tree, and buried the leash wrapped in white cloth. No words, just hearts. Two stories folding into one.